On the day I tried on my wedding dress, I was a few minutes late due to traffic. My fiancé's assistant was the one wearing the dress I had painstakingly picked out over 6 months. She clung to my fiancé's arm, whining that the dress's train was too long. She might trip. The designer quickly asked, "Do you need any alterations?" Felix nodded in agreement, listened to her, make the changes. I boldly pushed the door open, staring at Shirley. "The bride is indeed the most beautiful," I said. "Congratulations on your wedding." My sudden entrance took everyone by surprise. I just loved that wedding dress too much. Shirley, flustered, stroked the dress and hid behind Felix. Felix's 2 friends were there with them. "Don't misunderstand, Felix's bride is you, and the dress is yours," they said. It was only then Felix responded, explaining that Shirley was just trying it on. Just trying it on. I had waited for that dress for over half a year, and hadn't even seen it in person, before someone else tried it on. I met Felix's gaze with a mocking smile. "Trying it on is so meaningless. Just let her wear it at the wedding." Felix's face turned cold immediately, and his expression was so dark it could wring water out of it. "Jane, don't give me that attitude here." Shirley grew up away from her parents, without a privileged life, or a chance to wear fancy dresses, he explained. She just wanted to know what it looks like on her. Shirley cautiously looked at me and wiped away her tears. "If Jane doesn't like it, I'll take it off right now," she said. She actually started to undress the wedding gown right in public. Felix quickly turned and grabbed her hand, stopping her from unzipping. He comforted her in a low voice. "Shirley, it's all right. You look beautiful in it. Jane just looks down on people. Ignore her." I watched the scene with a cold smile. If this had been in the past, I would have made a scene, dragging Jane and Felix's families into it for a fair judgment. But now, I was calm inside. That pure, sincere heart I had for him was already gone. Because of our family businesses, my family and Felix's became partners, and Felix and I became acquainted. He was very nice to me, cared for me, protected me, and stayed by my side. Especially after we started college, we often met in the library, so I always saved the seat next to me for him. The day the library lost power, Felix slowly approached me and whispered in my ear, asking if I wanted to be with him. I was confused and conflicted then. On one hand, he had been a part of my entire youth, someone I had liked from middle school through college. On the other hand, I was concerned about our parents' casual matchmaking jokes. But love is a free will submission. When I nodded, he turned and kissed me. The library lights suddenly came back on, and we quickly pulled away, our faces red. After that day, I became Felix's girlfriend. I was no longer just someone following him around. I stood by his side proudly. He watched sunsets and evening glows with me, listened to my worries with the sea breeze, attended important events in my life, and spent every Valentine's Day with me. But I began to sense his growing indifference. I thought it was just a phase in our relationship, so I tried even harder to arrange dates and fulfill my duties as a girlfriend. I believed that if I nurtured our relationship with devotion, I could make roses bloom with my name on his barren land. But it wasn't until I saw how carefully he cared for Shirley that I realized his heart wasn't barren. Felix and Shirley's families had a history together. When they were kids, Felix once lost Shirley due to negligence while playing. She was only found when they were in high school. All these years, he never stopped looking for his sister, and never let her status falter in his heart. I was just a substitute. I was never the one he wanted to nurture. Shirley placed the wedding dress she had taken off next to me, and I snapped back to reality. I pushed the dress back to her. Don't know if it was on purpose, but the delicate bag fell, and the dress skirt spread across the floor. "Jane, I've explained it already. Stop being unreasonable." I looked at the wedding dress one last time, and shook my head. "I'm not causing a scene." I turned to leave without any hesitation. Shirley suddenly grabbed my hand, tears welling in her eyes. "Jane, I really didn't mean to. I'm sorry, okay? Don't be mad at Felix." I closed my eyes tightly. Her words, all of them, were a reminder to me of Felix's preferential treatment of her. "Shirley, come here," Felix said. "If she wants to leave, let her. She's the one being unreasonable. You don't need to apologize." His tone was reproachful yet softened, afraid to upset Shirley. I had never received such blatant favoritism. All I had was the title of a girlfriend. But Shirley had all of Felix's love. He remembered her sensitive stomach, always paying special attention to food and drink, even banning cold ingredients at his place. Because of her needs, I couldn't even enjoy a cold milk tea in summer. He said Shirley would crave it, and her stomach couldn't handle it. When we went out, Shirley always got the front seat, because she got car sick otherwise. When I told him that the front seat was for the girlfriend, he'd coolly reply that it's for the secretary. Back then, I naively thought he was joking to make me happy, until she wore the wedding dress I had waited so long for. Only then did I accept that he gave all his affection to Shirley, leaving me only with empty explanations. I stood outside the bridal shop, aimlessly wandering the streets, not knowing where to go. A low-profile black Maybach drove by, with Shirley's smiling eyes visible from the half-open window. Her cheerful laughter leaked through the window, wrapping tightly around my shattered heart. This heart had ached countless nights for Felix, but now, it felt nothing. I could finally get free from this relationship. When I got home, it was already after midnight. The house was empty. I charged my phone and found no new messages or calls. I laughed at myself. Then an email notification popped up. I opened it to find an invitation from an international exchange program. They had invited me last year, but I turned it down for my wedding with Felix, because once I accepted, I'd be working abroad. When the mentor heard about this, he was so angry that he smashed 2 cups in his office. You fool, do you think giving up your career for a man will move him? He'll just think you're worthless and look down on you even more. A 40-year veteran professor yelled at me without considering his image, but his scolding didn't wake me up. This time, I didn't hesitate. I decisively accepted the invitation. However, after a year, rejoining the club wouldn't be easy. I decided to brush up on my professional knowledge and prepare myself to go abroad. But when I walked into the study, I found that all my professional books were gone. Instead, there were plush toys and literary miscellanies on the shelves. That toy was the one Felix first won for Shirley from a claw machine. It was just sitting there, brazenly, in what was supposed to be our home. Suddenly, the study door swung open, and Felix saw me holding that toy. He frowned and asked, "What are you doing here?" "Looking for some books." Felix's frown deepened, looking puzzled. "There are no books of yours here." I stayed silent, not answering. I knew what he was wondering about. If this had been before today, I would have insisted on putting a few books in here. If he disagreed, I'd pretend to be angry and make a fuss, refusing to let him sleep until he gave in. At that moment, he seemed a bit dazed, clearly deep in thought. After you left, Shirley remembered she hadn't done her checkup. I went with her in the afternoon. In the evening, no need to explain, just rest. I was about to open the door when he grabbed my wrist. "Are you still upset about the wedding dress? If you don't like it, we can get a new one." "No need. I'm not upset." This was the second time I interrupted him today, something I had never done before. Even when he was just babbling when drunk, I would listen attentively and respond joyfully. "What's wrong with you?" He didn't let go but tightened his grip, with a familiar look of confusion on his face. "I'm fine, just tired." "Did you do something to make you feel guilty?" I slowly raised my hand. He thought I was going to stroke him, and turned his face to accommodate me. But then, I plucked a long chestnut-colored hair from his shoulder. I smiled silently and looked at him indifferently. "I told you many times, nothing is going on between me and Shirley. It's not what you think." Did I say it was her? He pressed his lips tightly, then suddenly let go of my wrist and grabbed his suit jacket off the sofa. "Cool down yourself." The next morning, I made a pot of seafood porridge, adding 2 crabs. Felix came over, lured by the aroma. When he saw the porridge, his face darkened. "Why make seafood porridge?" "Because Shirley doesn't eat seafood, and can't handle crabs either." Since we moved in together, I'd taken on cooking every meal for Felix. Because I was a good cook, Shirley had 1 meal and clamored for more. So every morning, Felix would take 2 packed breakfasts to the office. Today, I only made 1 serving. Seeing I didn't respond, Felix went to the kitchen and discovered no breakfast for himself. "You know Shirley's situation well. She's like my sister. What are you mad about?" "Felix, I just wanted some seafood porridge. Besides, I really don't mind how you two interact, but I won't cater to both of you anymore." He opened and closed his lips, finally squeezing out a few words. "Really don't mind." "Yeah, I won't mind from now on." His typically cold expression cracked a bit and then suppressed. "There's a meeting tonight. Come with me." "I'm busy." "Let Shirley go with you." I adjusted his tie, patted his shoulder, and left with my coat. Just as I opened the door, it slammed shut. Felix cornered me by the entrance. "Jane, you're not acting right." In the beginning, I often asked him why he was with me. He'd laugh and hold me, saying I was like a little fish swimming into his heart. That memory was so old, I couldn't remember what was said after that. The once happy memories were shrouded in a thick, lingering black fog. I frowned and pushed him aside. "Let go, you're making me late for work." He didn't expect me to push him so roughly, and his face changed instantly. "Jane, if you dare leave, don't expect me to forgive you even if you come back crying." When I arrived at work, I told my boss I was resigning and preparing to go abroad. The receptionist ran over when she saw me and said someone had sent a bouquet of roses. I smiled back, but didn't even glance at it. Eventually, the receptionist took a photo of the card and sent it to me. I remember you love roses. Have a great day at work, Jane. I turned off my phone with a cold smile. He never really knew me. I'm allergic to pollen. How could I like roses? That year on my birthday, Felix, following Shirley's suggestion, gave me a sea of roses. I kept sneezing and wiping my tears, and Felix thought I was touched. Later, when I went to get my allergy medicine, Shirley whispered in my ear. I told Felix you're allergic to pollen, but he wouldn't listen. I'm sorry. I'll apologize for him that you had to suffer like this. I smiled without saying anything. Since then, I doubted that Shirley was just an innocent girl. Before leaving work, I got a message from Felix. Do you like them? I'll pick you up for dinner tonight. I didn't reply. When I left the office, I saw Felix was already there. He stood by the car waiting, and Shirley was leaning against the passenger window, smiling at me. I said nothing and got in the back seat. The restaurant Shirley picked was one she liked, a Western cuisine place. I barely ate anything and soon went to the restroom. Coming out of the stall, I saw Shirley at the sink washing her hands with a slip beside her. She splashed some water and looked at me through the mirror. Jane, could you hand me that thing? I don't want to get it wet. I initially didn't want to take it, but the moment I looked down, I saw the 3 words adoption certificate printed on that red book. In the mother section, there was the name Shirley. In the father section, it read, Felix. It wasn't until my hands started to shake and tears welled up in my eyes that she spoke softly, as if she had enjoyed my reaction enough. Jane, do you think the name Felix gave the child sounds nice? Tears dripped onto my hand, and my eyes were locked onto that adoption certificate, staring at the child's name. At that moment, I felt deeply that tears can really be forced back. But Shirley's next words pushed me into an abyss. Jane, don't you want to know which day Felix and I adopted the child? She leaned closer to me, pointing to a small date in the right corner. It was the day Felix proposed. While he was promising a future to me, he made an even bigger promise to Shirley. Do you know which day we went to pick up the child? This time, she didn't let me guess. It was the day I tried on my wedding dress. Felix told me he was accompanying Shirley for a checkup. Was he actually picking up their child? Jane, I have no sense of security. I've always wanted to know how far Felix would go for me. I never imagined he would never let me down. I was frozen there by her insane look. For a moment, I thought Shirley was like a calm lunatic ready to tear me apart. I pathetically ran away. I booked a hotel room last minute. Without even taking off my clothes, I soaked myself in the bathtub. As the water covered my head and the ringing in my ears drowned out my heartbeat, I suddenly sat up. The phone rang non-stop, annoyingly persistent. I picked it up, and Felix's enraged voice questioned me repeatedly. Jane, what did you say to Shirley? As soon as she got home, she took pills. She was still trying to persuade me not to blame you until she went into surgery. Jane, how did I never realize how cruel and vicious you are? Get over here and apologize to Shirley until she forgives you. Otherwise, there's no need for marriage. My family won't have a woman with such a venomous heart. I had never heard him say so many words at once. But amidst his escalating accusations, I became calm. Let's break up. What did you just say? Do you still think about breaking up now? Felix, I was the one scared today, not her. I didn't say anything. Can't you trust me just once? Why is it you never stand by my side? Because you don't deserve it. If you don't come to apologize, there's no need for us to meet again. The phone fell into the bathtub. I thought my heart wouldn't hurt anymore, but it painfully tightened again, twisting within me. When I got out of the tub, I realized I hadn't brought any clothes to change into. My phone was ruined. I decided to borrow a phone from the front desk. I threw on a bathrobe over my wet clothes and rushed out. I didn't expect to bump into someone. I quickly apologized. When I was helped up, I realized it was a familiar face. What luck, meeting an old classmate at a hotel. Jack's forearm rested below my hand, without really holding me, keeping a half-arm's distance. He was followed by a few businessmen in suits, clearly here for a deal, making me look even more disheveled. Long time no see. I tried to ignore the awkward atmosphere. He had his assistant escort the others to the top-floor conference room and whispered a few instructions. Once they left, he smiled at me. Our school's beauty queen always ends up looking so messy. Huh? Is it Felix again? How many more times are you gonna get hurt over him? Jack always seems to see me at my lowest. The first time we met was in high school. It was pouring rain that day, and I was running to bring Felix an umbrella. In my hurry, I didn't notice a puddle and fell flat on my face. The umbrella flew out of my hand, and my clothes were dirty, but I clung tightly to that umbrella. Jack showed up, carried me to the school nurse, and even delivered the umbrella to Felix for me. After that, Felix told me Jack had a bad reputation and to stay away from him. Back then, I was head over heels for Felix, so I naturally thought he was right. I never spoke to Jack again, even when he helped me a few more times. I'd thank him and hurriedly distance myself. I never expected to run into him here. Soon, his assistant returned with a few bags of women's clothes. When Jack handed me the bags, I was a bit slow to react. Hurry up and change. You don't feel uncomfortable. Pushed into the room, I looked at the well-fitting clothes in my hand, curious about how he knew my size. After a quick change, I planned to invite him for dinner. Opening the door, I saw his tall figure standing in the shadow, tossing a metal lighter. I slowly sighed and walked over to him. Jack, let me treat you to dinner. Throwing the unlit cigarette into the trash, he smiled. Sure. We went to the hotel's top-floor view restaurant, with a 360-degree panoramic view of the city. Unexpectedly, we ran into two people I wouldn't have expected. Felix and Shirley, sitting by the window, with Felix cutting her steak. Out of the hospital in just 2 hours, I couldn't help but snort. Jack saw what I was looking at, squinting with a sly smile. Wanna piss them off? No need. Let's just eat. His expression changed for a moment. Then he suddenly took my hand and put it on his arm. I want to. Jane, just do me this favor. With swagger, he led me to a table right in front of Felix, with a better view and a higher minimum spend. Damn, that competitive streak of his. I understood and smiled at him. He didn't mind, just beckoned for the menu. Every dish he ordered shocked me because they were all my favorites. Seeing my surprise, he wore an obviously smug look. Just as I was about to ask him about it, Felix walked over with a wine glass. Jack, is business in LA not good? What brings you to New York? Indeed, I had some setbacks here before. Just came back to make up for it. Felix smiled and extended his right hand. Jack raised an eyebrow and shook it. Two men, one standing, one sitting. I could feel the tension between them even from across the table. Felix, who is this? Shirley's gentle voice snapped Felix out of his thoughts. The annoyance on his face vanished instantly, returning to calm. An irrelevant person, he said, glancing at me before falling silent again. Felix, since you have a lovely companion, please don't disturb Jane and me while we have dinner. What did you call her? Jane. Why, Felix, are you jealous? Felix sneered dismissively. Whatever. After they left, Jack leaned in and asked, feeling better now? Suddenly, the sound of a chair scraping across the floor pierced the room. I didn't look back. Staring at the hand Jack had squeezed so hard it left marks, I asked, does it hurt? With a mischievous grin, he stretched out his hand. It hurts a lot. How about you kiss it better? Behind me, a glass shattered. During dinner, Jack kept up a steady stream of jokes and gossip, each one hitting my funny bone. I laughed so much my stomach hurt and my throat felt parched. Soon, a waiter brought over a pot of fruit tea. I took small sips, finding the familiar taste comforting. I'm not a child anymore. Once or twice could be a coincidence, but the fact that he remembered all my preferences, some of which had changed because of Felix, was remarkable. After dinner, Jack insisted we walk off our meal. We took the elevator downstairs and bumped into Felix and Shirley as soon as we stepped out. Felix stood by the passenger door, staring right at me. Jane, come home with me. I shook my head, not wanting a public argument. He caught up and grabbed my arm. Jane, I'm sorry about what I said earlier. Come home and you can punish me however you like. His voice was low, making his simple words sound filled with hidden meanings. Feeling embarrassed, I looked at Jack and noticed the disappointment in his eyes. It hit me. Felix was using me to mess with Jack. I shook off his hand forcefully. Felix, did you forget we broke up just a few hours ago? You chose your first love over me and told me never to see you again. Jane, it doesn't matter if you're mad at me. Just don't lower yourself to mix with someone like him. You know how unreliable he is. A playboy in high school and probably know better now. He seemed to ignore the breakup, continuing his rant. So you want to compare a guy with constant tabloid girlfriends to someone who prefers a woman he's not even dating. Which is more trustworthy? Jack tugged at my sleeve. Don't listen to him. The rumors are all lies. I didn't care enough to stop them, that's all. I can prove it. I brushed his hand away and glared at him, then turned back to Felix. If all men are like this, I'd rather choose someone who's funny, spends time with me, makes me happy, and gives me everything he has. What do you think? With each compliment, Jack stood a little taller, almost lifting his chin to the sky. "Jane, we're about to get married. You're going to be my wife. How can you? And what about it? Did you see us holding hands, hugging, or kissing? We just had dinner." "Felix, you're too sensitive." I mimicked his tone, pausing for effect. "Besides, we're already broken up. You can marry whoever you want. It's none of my business." "Why?" Felix muttered in confusion. "Because you're not worth it." Felix's eyes widened in shock as he looked at me. "Felix, answer me honestly and I might consider forgiving you." "Ask away," Felix said, shaking off Shirley's grip, desperation in his eyes. "Were you with me because Shirley said she'd like me as her sister-in-law, that I'd take care of her and never mistreat her? Did you ask me out because I wouldn't bully her?" For the first time, Felix looked truly vulnerable. He hesitated, clearly torn between the hope of my forgiveness and the pain of my question. Finally, in a hoarse voice, he admitted, "Yes, at first. But later." He couldn't finish because Jack punched him hard. I didn't see Felix for a long time after that. 3 months passed quickly, and it was the day before I was to leave the country. Jack stayed by my side the whole time, never saying much about that day. He just took me out to eat, have fun, and see exhibitions. Only once, while we were drunk by the beach, did he quietly complain, "It took me 5 years to get from LA to New York. How many years will it take me to get from New York to Milan?" I patted his head, trying to flatten his unruly hair, and silently thought, maybe we'll move faster together. When I dropped Jack off at his place, I didn't expect to see Felix. He was holding an elegant bag, one I recognized. "Jane, I've had a new wedding dress made, exactly like the first one. No one else has worn it, I promise." "So, you knew I cared." "Jane," Felix's voice was almost pleading. Seeing I was unmoved, he finally lost his temper. "What do you want me to do? I owe Shirley. If I hadn't taken her out, she wouldn't have suffered so much. You don't know how skinny she was when she returned. It's all my fault. So you want to compensate with my love, my marriage, and my life?" Ignoring his pained expression, I continued, "I won't accept that. She always asks me if I'm mad or if I blame her, but she never once tries to keep distance from you. While she cuddles in your arms, playing her flirty games with your special treatment, she pitifully asks me if I'm angry. Can't you see through her tricks? You've always been gentle and open-minded. I thought you didn't care." He chooses his words carefully, watching my expression. "No, Felix, it's not that you thought I didn't care. You thought I loved you enough. But now, I don't love you anymore. Can you stop bothering me? I don't believe you, Jane. Don't say things you don't mean." Jack, who was leaning against me, suddenly stands up straight. I've known for a while that he was pretending. Jack pulls me behind him and faces Felix. "I always thought you were a worthy opponent, and Jane liked you. So losing to you was just losing. But how are you deserving? How can you trample her love and effort like this? Honestly, you're just a dumbass who wants everything." Jack takes out a box from his pocket. Inside is a necklace with engraved letters and a pendant that's a ring. It's my first design sketch, a concrete imagination of love when I was young. I am beyond shocked. I always thought I lost this sketch, but it was with Jack. I'm not saying I want to be your fallback, just hoping that when the time is right, you'd consider me. I look up at him and suddenly smile. "Jack, do you know why I designed this?" I unwrap the necklace, put the ring on my middle finger, and hold the necklace up. Jack quickly lowers his head. I put it on him, then lift my hand in front of him. From now on, 2 hearts become one, linked forever, never to part. Jack suddenly hugs me tightly. As he does, Felix looks at me deeply before leaving in defeat. After going abroad, everything went smoothly because we were well prepared, and I decided to stay for 2 years. During those 2 years, Jack traveled back and forth between New York and Milan nearly every month. Felix's name started to fade from my life until my calm days were disrupted by a book of manuscripts. After graduation, I lost my sketches. I searched a few times, but couldn't find them and eventually gave up. It turned out a younger student found them and donated them to the library, and they got preserved. That book had my design drawings and some whimsical ideas about life, like moving furniture, a table that cooks, and so on. These unintentionally revealed my preferences. The first time we met, Jack ordered 10 dishes that I had sketched, including fruit tea. There were also many stories about my secret crush, but they were all metaphorically represented by various toys and fruits. Unexpectedly, a student found them, took photos, and posted them online. These crush illustrations became popular. Lots of people were analyzing the character, who appears kind, but is actually cruel, and even wrote many anecdotes. If Felix saw them, as long as he wasn't missing his memory, he would match them with our past events and realize that Shirley had been bullying me from the start. Given his cleverness, he'd understand Shirley's subsequent actions too. So, Felix also started frequently traveling between New York and Milan, stubbornly clinging to me even if he ran into Jack. He made a necklace and ring just like in my sketch, and wore them around his neck. He also assembled a team to develop my whimsical designs from the sketches. During this time, I heard that Shirley attempted suicide many times. Each time, Felix was by her bedside, but he somehow accelerated her suicide attempts, leading to her eventual mental breakdown. Later, it even came out that Shirley had killed the couple who brought her to escape from the village. The police wanted to arrest Shirley, but Felix stopped it with a mental health evaluation. Felix personally took her to a psychiatric hospital. When my term was up and I was about to return home, I found my inbox filled with Felix's apology emails. He explained the reason for adopting a child, the ambiguous relationship between them, and Shirley's manipulations. The latest email was from 3 days ago, saying he thought I'd only forgive him if he died. Actually, I'm not angry anymore, so there's nothing to forgive. It's all just his delusion. Jack told me Felix nearly went bankrupt for those developments. The only success was the moving furniture, which he never brought to market. Jack asked if I felt bad for Felix, or if I regretted not choosing him. That was the first time I formally confessed to Jack. You've never been a fallback plan. You're the only right answer. The last time I saw Felix was at my wedding. I wore a dress designed by Jack, with our names embroidered along its long train. Jack personally stitched every name. Felix cried like a child in the audience as he watched. Years later, I found out he came to the wedding with a wedding dress I had designed, planning to crash it. But seeing me walk through that door filled with happiness, he finally realized he'd lost me forever. After the wedding, sorting through the gifts from friends and family, I found a property deed with my name on it. Inside, a note fell out. The house is furnished with your favorite designs, from your sketches. All bookshelves are restocked with books in your field, and the artwork in the house is all original pieces for you to deal with as you wish. The house means nothing else. It's just a place for you to rest if he treats you badly. Don't worry, any trace of the past is gone. Jack got so mad that he tore the note to pieces. I found it funny and handed him the house deed, telling him to sell it and donate the money to poor mountain regions. Later, Felix used his last savings to buy that sketchbook from the library. Then he completely vanished. In the third fall, while I was playing with my kid at home, I got a call from a stranger telling me that Shirley had passed away. I expressed my condolences to the person on the other end for someone I once knew. Finally, I said to them, I also wish you well and hope you find peace soon. Goodbye, Felix.